This program, while curated to help you improve your health, contains general advice and should not replace the individual advice of your medical practitioner.
We're taught not to talk about our bodies, not to talk about our symptoms.
Most women are not concerned enough about their periods. They accept suffering.
Fertility is on the downside, male and female.
And the amount of pressure that we put on ourselves is just astronomical.
The common thing that comes up is this feeling that we're not good enough.
They're told you're just depressed, here's an antidepressant, or you're just getting older, you just need to live with it.
Because if women's health falls apart, the entire world falls apart.
In life, it's normal to have ups and downs. But what do we do when we get stuck? I've always been fascinated by the healing journey. Why do some people get better while others fail to make the shift? In Season 2 of The Shift, we explore the intricate world of women's health and help you discover how to balance your hormones and understand yourself better so that you can truly thrive.
The menstrual cycle is a vital sign of female well-being.
My mum just used to say, "Oh, Nan, I'm so sorry. It's part of being a woman."
I would like a call to arms for women to know that their intuition isn't lying to them.
I'm Katherine Maslen, and this is The Shift.
I'm seeing an escalation of problems for women. I've seen the evolution of malfunction of the female body. So if we start with the young ones, they're going through puberty. Okay, so they're, we'll say, 12 years old. They have their first period. And then maybe 3 months later, they have another one. And oh my gosh, this period is horrendous. It's really heavy and painful. And then the next one comes and it's even worse. It lasts for a week and a half, and the pain is terrible. The kid is taken out of school, and then they hobble along. The mom is giving her, ibuprofen and such. And then finally, the mom takes her to the pediatrician and says, she's been having periods for a year and a half, and she's now, almost 14, and this is miserable. And so what do? They put her on birth control pills. So she's still 13 years old and she's on birth control pills. I'm seeing this rampantly. What is not being understood is that the menstrual cycle for a young female, any female at any age who's reproductive age, the menstrual cycle is a vital sign of female well-being. When the menstrual cycle isn't right, meaning it's irregular, it's really heavy, it's painful, or other symptoms like PMS are occurring, when the menstrual cycle is abnormal in any way, it means there's something wrong with that woman. Something is really wrong. So you have to get to the understanding. You have to be a detective and find out what is wrong. Very often it's nutrient deficiencies, actually. That's rampant now. They're deficient in all their antioxidants and magnesium and so on. So instead of addressing the real problem, they're trying to cover it up, sweep it under the rug by giving something that takes away their natural hormones, their natural rhythms, without any understanding that these years, the teen years and the years in the 20s, are really foundational years for development of women. Their bodies are still evolving. The vagina is still evolving. The bladder is evolving. The brain isn't completed until over 25, 26 years of age. And the musculoskeletal system, which is a critical part of life and health, is not fully developed until a woman is close to 30, in that range, around 30. And if you have a woman on birth control pills through her teen years and her 20s, which is what is happening rampantly now, she will never optimally develop her musculoskeletal system. That means develop adequate amounts of bone, healthy ligaments and tendons, and adequate amounts of muscle. And as I said, these organs are not just for structure and function of movement, which are really critically important, but they're also endocrine organs. So hormonal problems are really humongous in this young group. When I started practice, it was uncommon, not unheard of, but uncommon that such high percentages of young girls have terrible menstrual cycles. Their hormones are not functioning properly, and they have irregular cycles, they're not ovulating well, and they're having all these cramps, and this really needs to be addressed.
Hello and welcome to Season 2 of The Shift. I'm your host, Katherine Maslen, and before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself and let you know a little bit about what you're in store for over the next 16 episodes. The Shift is a docu-series podcast. It's created by myself in collaboration with my team at the Shift Clinic. I'm a clinical naturopath, author, mother, health advocate, and the founder of Shift Clinics, where we help people worldwide to shift their health and their lives. We're going to go deep on all things health and wellness, and in this season, you'll be discovering just about everything you need to know about women's health. Women's health is all-encompassing, but in this series, I'm going to navigate you through some major themes, including hormones, thyroid health, adrenal functions, stress, emotional well-being, and sexuality. As I conducted my interviews, some really prominent themes came up, and I'm going to be sharing these with you as we move through the series. My hope is that by listening to this series, you'll be inspired to make a shift in your life. In this season, we're going to challenge some paradigms and flip a lot of what is commonly thought about women's health on its head. We're going to provide some practical tips along the way for you to be able to make your shift. To bring you this series, I interviewed 24 world leaders in women's health from around the globe. You just heard from Dr. Felice Gersh, who you might remember from season 1 of The Shift, which was all about gut health. Dr. Gersh is an integrative gynecologist from California. She's been an OB/GYN for over 20 years and is a wealth of information, as you can probably already tell. I look forward to introducing you to each of our amazing experts as we move through the series. Thank you for joining me for season 2 of The Shift. Let's get started.
I think that our current lifestyles are just not conducive for optimal health and optimal hormonal function. And I think that that's why so many of these conditions are just absolutely skyrocketing, because now women are expected to be everything to everybody. And the amount of pressure that we put on ourselves is just astronomical. And I think that's also why I'm seeing almost in epidemic quantities women coming in with like thyroid dysfunction or, Hashimoto's diagnosis, and often after their second child as well. And I see this so commonly, and it's too common for it to be coincidence. And I know that there's something to that. And I think that we're under so much stress and pressure, and we're not allowing ourselves time to, recover and heal. And also we're not supporting our systems the way they need to be. So our diet and our lifestyle certainly isn't conducive for that health and hormonal function too. And we're just not living in a way that is optimal for that hormonal support.
That was Dr. Andrea Huddleston, chiropractor and women's health expert. Andrea is also known as the period whisperer, and she has some great insights to share later in the series. Next up, we have Alyssa Vitti. Alyssa is a women's health expert, the author of In the Flow, and the founder of Flow Living. I wanted to know what she thought about the state of women's health today.
What we do know is that about 47% of women are struggling with their hormones in general. That would certainly mean and include period issues, fertility issues, libido issues, thyroid issues. The reality is it's all connected, right? If you have a thyroid issue, it's going to affect your cycle. If you're having hormone imbalance with, let's say, insufficient progesterone, that's going to affect your cycle, your ovulation, your fertility. So it's really about which lens are we looking at. Most women are not concerned enough about their periods. They accept suffering. So typically, women get more inaction or activated when they want to do something with their period, like conceive, or they're struggling with perimenopause and they're trying to, relieve symptoms that plague them daily. But most women in their just adult menstruating years, if they're having debilitating cramps or, PMS or mid-cycle pain or acne, they accept that as quote unquote part of being a woman and having a period. And that's what I mean about how troublesome that is, because there was a very important study done about 15 years ago called the Biocycle Study. And we know that just leaving PMS untreated during your reproductive years can increase dramatically the rate and the risk at which you will have the chance to develop the 4 big diseases of inflammation: heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and dementia. So we should not accept the suffering of our periods as quote unquote part of being a woman, because it does not hold water, right? All of those myths that pain is part of the story and cramps are normal. You've inherited them and there's nothing that you can do to make them better. You just have to suffer through until your period's over. All of these mythological, cultural pieces of that narrative hold women back and keep them passive from doing what they should do, which is, take immediate and massive action to resolve this, enormous set of biofeedback from the body that's letting you know that a lot of things are not working properly and are not being supported properly.
So how do hormones actually work? The hormonal system is arguably the most difficult system to understand, as there are so many complexities going on. Nat Kringoudis is a doctor of Chinese medicine and the author of Beautiful You, a book written for teenagers to understand the changes happening in their body and how to navigate early womanhood and everything that goes with it. She explains what a hormone is.
Hormones are obviously the chemical messengers that tell your body what to do and how to behave. And some of them, I guess, we're more aware of than others. You're not sitting there being able to influence your, let's say, for example, your hormones that make you ovulate. You can't sit there and go, right, hormones, try as I might, I am going to absolutely influence that to happen today. That requires a symphony of various hormones to be released at certain times to allow that to happen. However, you can influence other hormones that you might have heard of, like your dopamine and your serotonin, by doing things like exercising or having a hug or doing something that you know that's going to allow you to release those feel-good hormones and endorphins. So it's a very broad term, but basically it's the messengers that indicate or influence and tell your body what to do. And I think the main two hormones we speak about really, especially for women's health, are your sex hormones and your stress hormones. And they're very much influential over each other.
If you're curious about your hormonal health, take our quiz. You'll get a report with insights into some key areas you need to look at when it comes to getting your hormones in alignment, as well as some handy tips to get you started. Go to theshiftclinic.com/links. Hormones have all kinds of actions in the body. As well as your sex hormones that regulate your menstrual cycle, you have stress hormones like cortisol, thyroid hormones, pancreatic hormones like insulin, and so many others. We're going to explore these as we move through the series. Dr. Libby Brighton is the author of the Period Repair Manual and the Hormone Repair Manual. She is a naturopath that's been specialising in women's health for decades. What I wanted to know was, why are women so terrified of their hormones?
Women are terrified of hormones and terrified of menopause. I see it completely the opposite. I think our hormones are valuable while we have them. And then when we get to the age where we're calibrated to not have reproductive cycles anymore, menstrual cycles anymore, then that's healthy too. As to why women are so terrified of their hormones, the narrative has been that female hormones are a liability of some sort, that female hormones cause symptoms, cause mood symptoms, cause problems in women's lives. Whereas in reality, it's the complete opposite, of course. Our hormones are a source of health, strength. They're powerful in that we need to have good health and resilience to adapt to and feel well during the normal ups and downs of our hormones. That's the goal of being healthy, is to be able to adapt to the normal ups and downs. We have this idea that the male physiology is the normal physiology and that female physiology is the more complicated version, of which female hormones and the ovarian hormonal cycle is the complicated add-on. When in reality, female physiology is arguably the standard model of physiology. In utero, we're all female until about week 6 of gestation, when the maleness actually kicks in as an add-on. So through almost any lens, you could argue that female physiology is the normal physiology, and female physiology works with an ovarian cycle where 2 very important hormones, estrogen and progesterone, go up and down each month. And we need to just work with that rather than try to fight against it.
There's a lot of stigma when it comes to talking about periods and the unique issues that we face as women, and I'm going to explore them more as we move through the series. One thing that became very apparent while I was producing this season is that there is an unhealthy narrative around women's health that needs to change. I'm hoping that by understanding your body more, this will help to shift your mindset around your hormones in a beneficial way. The endocrine system is the collection of glands that secrete hormones in your body. I introduced you to integrative gynecologist Dr. Felice Gersh earlier on. Here, I ask her to explain how the endocrine system works.
Initially, you can think of it in the most basic way, that you have an area of the brain, and it's the hypothalamus, and it produces little releasing factors that go to the pituitary gland, which is often called the master gland. And then based on what the brain, which is the master, like we'll say the conductor, is in the brain, the brain then uses its first assistant, the pituitary, to then put out a bunch of different hormones from the pituitary gland. The pituitary makes the stimulating hormones, like thyroid stimulating hormone. So it controls the thyroid gland's production of hormones. And then it makes hormones that stimulate the adrenal gland to produce its hormones, and also the ovary to produce its, or of course in a male, it would be the male hormones like testosterone. And that's where we started. But it turns out that it's much more complex than that, because it turns out that there are hormones produced in many organs that we never even understood are actually endocrine organs. For example, muscle makes hormones, and bone makes hormones, and the GI tract, the gut, makes all kinds of hormones. Initially, like years ago when I was in medical school, I was taught about the fundamentals of the endocrine system, which is the brain, the pituitary, and then those major organs that produce hormones that the pituitary controls.
We're going to discuss how the endocrine system works in more detail in the next episode. Dr. Will Cole is an integrative MD and the author of The Inflammation Spectrum and Intuitive Fasting. I wanted to ask him what he was seeing when it came to the epidemic increases in women's health issues.
We're talking about women's hormones, we're talking about autoimmunity, and let's talk about the connection between the two there. I mean, many people on this autoimmune inflammation spectrum, that autoimmunity and those inflammatory problems are impacting the endocrine system. So we see a lot of women with endometriosis and adenomyosis and, of course, Hashimoto's disease, or people that are on that spectrum where they're not overtly diagnosable by conventional medicine's criteria, but they have these autoimmune components to their hormonal problems. So this collision of their immune system / inflammation and the endocrine system, the hormonal system, is really a growing issue in our world that many people fall through the cracks of conventional medicine. And because this is impacting women, and just look at all autoimmunity, for the most part, it's way more women than men. That's a lot of women that are going through some major issues. And they go to their doctor and they're told, you're just depressed, here's an antidepressant, or you're just getting older, you just need to live with it. And their intuition knows better. And I would like a call to arms for women around the world to know that their intuition isn't lying to them. That just because something's common doesn't necessarily mean it's normal.
Have you ever been to the doctor, had some testing done, been told everything is normal and fine despite you not feeling that way, and then been sent on your way? I've heard this story hundreds of times from our clients at Shift. It's something that's been going on for a while, and it's something that needs to stop. My hope is that by listening to this series, you can connect with your body and learn how to trust your intuition when it comes to your health. Dr. Suzanne Bartlett is an OB/GYN from Iowa, as well as the medical director from the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy. I wanted to hear what she thought about the current state of women's health issues.
I do think that they're on the increase, and I think that there are a number of reasons why that is the case. I personally believe that we're living in a very toxic soup here in the United States, and particularly in the Midwest where I live, where we have all kinds of chemicals from herbicides to pesticides that we know are endocrine disrupting compounds. And so that is something I'm extremely concerned about. We're seeing a rapid increase in obesity over the last couple of decades in this country, and especially in the Midwest. And as you know, obesity contributes to reproductive problems, everything from PCOS, which is then just one big vicious cycle, to other things.
Environmental health is really the impact of the environment, aspects of the environment on human health. For instance, air pollution. How does air pollution affect not only our lungs, our oxygen content, the inhalation of particulate matter, which are very tiny pieces of pollution, but what does it do for depression? I mean, we know there's associations between air quality, increased rates of suicide, increased rates of pollution, and also aggressive behavior and admission into psych wards. So environment plays a key role in many of our physiologic functions: air quality, water quality, food chemicals, flame retardant chemicals in our furniture, and other chemicals that are embedded into fabrics and textiles. But we have a whole host of other chemicals, from personal care products to cleaning products. And of course, we have different regulations around the world between countries. I can speak to only the United States in terms of our lack of regulation, but that's really what environmental health is. It's really being aware of that connection.
That was Dr. Ailey Cohen, an integrative rheumatologist and environmental health expert from New Jersey. This theme of toxins is a big one, and you'll hear more about it as we move through the series. One of the issues we face today is the increase in women who are experiencing infertility. This is another huge topic, and I wanted to touch on it here by asking Dr. Felice Gersh what she had to say.
Fertility is on the downside. Male and female both are having problems. It used to be, that certainly there's always been infertility. Now, I can tell you in the area where I live, there are IVF clinics everywhere because so many women are having fertility problems. Now, they usually say, well, because women are delaying childbirth, and that is certainly part of the issue. But you have to recognize that these are women also who were often put on birth control pills when they were very young teens, and then now when they're like 30 or so, they're deciding they want to have kids, and they were never right to begin with. They had problems when they first started out in puberty. And so they've never really developed into healthy women. They really have not. And now it's showing because, once again, just as the menstrual cycle is a vital sign of female well-being, fertility is a vital sign of female well-being.
The conversation continues in our Shift community group. Join the group by heading to theshiftclinic.com/links. When we are stressed, there are a number of physiological and emotional factors that impact us as women. If you listened to season 1, you'd remember the impact of stress on gut health. In this season, we're going to explore what stress does to our hormones and emotional state. Dr. Amy Shah is a double board certified integrative MD and the author of the book, I'm So Effing Tired. Here she opens up the conversation about stress.
The state of women's health right now, especially after the pandemic, it's in a terrible state. We are more stressed, about 19% more stressed than our male counterparts. We complain of fatigue and depression and anxiety at higher rates. A lot of people during the pandemic especially felt a heightened sense of anxiety and depression and stress. So we are not okay. We are not doing well, and we're not serving our women well because we're not giving them the tools. And we are actually putting more on their plate than they already had. So we're compounding the problem.
I think the biggest threat is maintaining a balance of everything that's happening. Women are not getting enough sleep and exercise. They're trying to do too much. They cannot balance everything. There's only so many hours in the day, and they just keep trying to add more things on. So by adding more things on, they're leaving out things that are critical to their health, like time for just self-awareness, meditation time, for taking a walk outside and just looking at the leaves and the grass and the clouds, and maybe having a soaking bath, and maybe having time to talk to the significant people in their lives. They don't have time for things that really matter because they're always busy doing something. This is going to take a huge toll on their health. So without having enough time for the really critical things in life that really give meaning to life and bringing people together and running around like, the old saying, like a chicken with the head cut off, they're just trying to do too much and the stress level is through the roof. I think the biggest threat is our modern society that's putting too much on women. And women have to just say, okay, I have to prioritize. And that means cutting stuff out. And you just have to learn how to say no and then have to say yes to yourself and your personal needs.
That was Dr. Felice Gersh again. What if we dug a little deeper and looked at the emotional aspects to the story of women's health? Certainly as women, we think differently, have different roles to play, and have many societal pressures and judgments that men generally don't have to deal with. Kate Reardon is a naturopath, intuitive healer, fasting expert, and the author of the 21-Day Cleanse. She is the co-founder of Natural Instinct Healing, a fasting retreat centre that helps people to go on deep transformational healing journeys. She knows a thing or two about healing, so I thought I'd ask her what she thought was the biggest issue that women were facing right now.
The common thing that comes up, and it's so true in the story of my life, is this feeling that we're not good enough. And I think that wound is really strong in the feminine psyche. I don't believe it's immune to men. I know men feel the same as well, but I know women really feel this. And it manifests in so many different ways throughout our life that sometimes it's even hard to understand, oh, that's that core wound of I'm not good enough. I mean, we know it in our physical body. I don't want to look this way. I want to be thinner. I want less cellulite. I want less pigmentation. I don't want grey hair. Like, we know that feeling of not being good enough in our physical body. I feel like most women can identify with that in some way, shape or form, purely by the external images that have been put into our brains from a very young age. But it's that mental and emotional feeling of not being good enough that is sometimes harder to even understand.
I think within women's health, we're led to believe that our bodies and the normal physiological functions are designed to cause us pain and suffering. With the woman's body, there's always something that's a problem. So periods are meant to be painful. You get your period, it's supposed to be irregular and horrific, and you're supposed to miss days of school. And then, as a teenager, you're supposed to start taking oral contraceptives because that's just what's meant to happen, because we can't handle our own physiology. And we're supposed to be on that until maybe we want to conceive. And then we need, fertility drugs because we can't do that on our own. And we don't understand our own bodies, and we don't understand how to, obviously make babies. And then we'll get to menopause, and that will also be an absolutely torturous time. So again, we'll need more drugs and possibly surgery. And then our different sort of reproductive organs are only temporary, and we can take them out at will. For example, our uterus is just for making babies or growing cancer. Like, these are the themes that pervade women's health. And each part of our body is taken apart, I guess, and looked at in this really reductionistic, very mechanistic way. The female system is not honoured and revered for this very complicated but amazing functioning system that is so sensitive to, all sorts of things, including our lifestyle, our stress, our diet, and everything else. But if you actually listen to a woman and you actually take into account everything that they're telling you and the signs and symptoms that they're experiencing, you will be able to see a really clear report card of what is going on with their health. And I think that this is part of what's missing in women's health, is that because our body is just always expected to be problematic, women are told that all of their suffering is normal. And maybe they've drawn the, quote unquote, short straw if they've got, really horrific symptoms, and they're not listened to.
That was Dr. Andrea Huddleston again. Next up, we have Dr. Jolene Brighton, a naturopathic doctor and the author of Beyond the Pill. Dr. Brighton is a powerhouse of information when it comes to women's health, so you'll become familiar with her as we explore these topics more deeply. I asked her what the issue was with society's attitudes towards women's health.
So number one is we're taught not to talk about our bodies, not to talk about our symptoms. We're taught that periods make people embarrassed and uncomfortable. Like, it is only like in the last handful of years, I think it was 2015 that was declared the year of the period. 2015. Like, I don't know. There's a whole like human species walking around. We've been having periods for a long time. So to understand that there is this societal norm of like things about a woman's body, they're taboo, they're not to be spoken about. We even get these subtle ways of feeling ashamed through TV commercials. I don't know the last time I saw a woman that bled blue. We don't bleed Windex, but yet if you see a pad or tampon commercial, they will be using something that looks like Windex or, some other chemical. It can't be red. There's also the part where women have been largely left out of research. It wasn't until the late 90s that the FDA was like, hey, hold up. Maybe women aren't just small men. Maybe women aren't just, the inferior version, which is a lot of what medicine had been carrying forward, is that the male is the standard and the women, they just come with these reproductive parts. They just have these, couple things that are different. We're finding now that women are being included in research. It's not true. And, another piece in all of this I think is really important for people to understand is just because now the FDA says, let's include women in research, doesn't mean they're accounting for the sex differences. Sometimes they are taking out the sex differences so that they can have statistically significant research. So we've got an issue that for a long time, we weren't studying women's bodies, not in research. And even in medicine, it took a long time to figure out the clitoris. Come on, medicine. So we've got that aspect. We've got underfunding in women's medicine and women's health issues. So many conditions that women face. Like in 2020, I shouldn't be sitting here saying, I don't know what causes endometriosis. I don't know what causes polycystic ovarian syndrome. Like, we've got some ideas, but if we'd been doing our due diligence in research decades ago, we'd be a lot closer to answering that.
The fact that most research is done on men and then translated to women was something that blew my mind when I learnt about it. As you'll discover as we move through this series, women are so very different to men. And we can't use the same information to guide our choices that would work for men and expect the same results for women. Dr. Libby Weaver is a nutritional biochemist, researcher, and a 13 times best-selling author. She works heavily in the field of women's health, so I asked her what made her so passionate about this area.
Because if women's health falls apart, the entire world falls apart. So I get teary when I talk about it, because when you think about the way that we all relate to each other, the way that we speak to children, whether they're our own or children we know, the way we speak to our friends, our mothers, our sisters, our partners, our colleagues, so much of the way we communicate comes from how we feel inside of ourselves and the way, so physiologically, and also our self-esteem, our self-worth. And I can't bear unnecessary suffering. And I have wanted women to really understand, firstly, how their body works so that they understand steps they can take to create change in their body, in their health, so that they feel stronger, happier, better energy, better quality sleep, can look at a lighter side of things, can laugh more easily, live a fulfilled life rather than worrying about things in their body that might be bugging them. And I really care about the way that people think. We're only just beginning to understand these thought systems, but to understand that that's possible, that we can have this innate reaction and not necessarily know we've gone there, to know that we then have this other thought system that can come in and actually assess the truth of that, it can bring such relief from the relentless stress. So I care so much because I want people to have amazing quality of lives. I want people to be able to be who they really are with confidence, not endlessly worrying about the approval of others, because we're not necessarily ourselves when we're trying to keep other people happy. And it's really, really special in those moments where you see the lights go back on for someone when they see that they've been making up a great big story about themselves that they just created when they were a little human to try to understand the environment they were growing up in, whether it was chaotic or really calm. We all do this to ourselves because it's almost like I think our voids create our values. So where we perceive something was missing in our life, we will often then value it. And often people don't value their health because there's never been a threat to their health. And I'm trying to, in my work, for it not to take a health crisis to wake people up to make the changes that they know in their hearts they need to make today to prevent the health crisis from happening. Because we know in our hearts when we need to do things differently. We know when we need to make some different food choices. We know when we need to start going to bed earlier. We know when we need to make a change in a particular relationship, exercise more, whatever it is. We know in our hearts how to take care of ourselves, and I'm trying to remove the blocks that might be there because of beliefs that people have absorbed as little kids about their worth. I'm trying to remove those beliefs so that they can act on what they know.
By now, you might be realising that there is more to women's health than meets the eye, and I have so much in store for you in future episodes. Make sure you hit subscribe or follow so that you don't miss a thing. You'll hear more from these experts and some new ones as we navigate this season, and we'll go deep on some of the topics you've already heard about. There is so much to know when it comes to women's health, and by the end of this series, you'll be an expert in your own body. In the next episode, I'm going to explore the concept of synergy, how the organs, cells, and chemical messengers in your body work together in harmony to keep you healthy and balanced every day.
Coming up on The Shift.
We have a hormonal highway in our bodies.
We have to look at all the systems and the connection between them.
Hormones are the messengers of the body.
All of these systems, how are they interacting with one another?
We have to get back to basics and understand the critical importance of diet for health.
If we optimize our microbiome, we take care of our gut. We are, in effect, helping our hormones at the same time.
This series is a production of The Shift Clinic. Hosted by Katherine Maslen. Music and sound design by Shade Furlong. Thank you to all of our experts. For more details on them, go to theshiftclinic.com.
We can be. We must be.
The first generation to end extreme poverty.
The generation most determined to fight injustice and inequality.
The generation that saves the planet
from climate change.
And this is how we will get it done.
The Global Goals.
A 15-year plan for everyone, everywhere.
With no one left behind.
The Global Goals are a framework that collectively help us
support the health of our people
and the planet.
At Shift, we are ambassadors for the Global Goals.
This project supports Global Goal number 6.
Clean water and sanitation.
Every time you listen
to an episode of The Shift,
we provide a day's access to clean water for a human in need
in Malawi, Africa.
Water is the foundation to health, and we believe
every human should have access
to clean, healthy water.
So please share this podcast wide
and keep tuning in
so we can impact those who need it the most.